right. So, hey, everybody. My name is Jonathan G. Blanco. We're here at the TF Labs Founder Roundtable. I'm really excited for our conversation today. We have lots of great founders here that are going to join in the conversation. And we're going to be talking about accelerators and getting into accelerators and just kind of what all that means. We have two amazing guests here today, David Malcolm and Bob Crimmins. I've known Bob since I got into startups and tech. And Bob, I think I don't think you are my first friend in the startup community. So it's great to have you here. And David, we don't know each other well yet, but I look forward to getting to know you as well. So I'd love if David, perhaps you introduce yourself first, and then we'll have Bob introduce himself.
Sorry, a little technology issue there. So, hi everybody. Welcome to our, I guess, not welcome, but the startup journey. What a fun journey it is, eh? I was introduced into the startup world now in earnest about 10 years ago with Techstars. I started mentoring for the local Seattle Techstars class. I think the first class I mentored for was class number 9 of Techstars, and I believe Techstars now is at class number 300 or 400 or 500. I don't know. They've grown immensely since back then. That's actually when I first met Bob Crimmins as well, because he was a mentor for Techstars Seattle as well. As I was mentoring, I actually got recruited by Techstars to create and run their first corporate accelerator. So we were accelerator number 15 for Techstars, the Microsoft Accelerator for Connect, powered by Techstars. That's quite a mouthful. And it was quite a journey because Techstars had never done anything like that before, nor had Microsoft. It was Microsoft's first foray into the world of accelerators. We ran a couple of those, or I ran a couple of those, and then I actually left Techstars because I wanted to join with one of the teams. In fact, it was one of the teams that was hardest to get to join the accelerator because they questioned the value. Fortunately, they did join, and they promptly got purchased by Microsoft. So I had worked at Microsoft prior to that, years before that. So I didn't want to go back to Microsoft. So I ended up mentoring and advising, and fast forward, I'm now working with Bob and Startup Haven to run the inaugural Startup Haven Accelerator, which we'll be happy to talk about as it relates to the accelerator world that it sounds like you're all interested in pursuing. Bob, why don't you jump in next?
Excellent. And real quick, Bob, I love to take a group photo. So if everybody can get ready for a group photo real quick and say cheese. Lizzie, say cheese. Lizzie. All right, I guess she is technically saying cheese.
Oh, sorry. I couldn't hear you. I'm so sorry.
Put your camera on.
Technical difficulties. Oh, I have technical difficulties. I can't. That's why my camera's not working. I'm sorry.
All right, fine. 1, 2, 3. All right, thanks everybody. Bob.
Yeah. Hey everybody. Really good to meet you. I know I've met a couple other folks in previous sessions. I think maybe through WeWork. In any case, a little about myself. So I've been in the startup world in Seattle for a little over 20 years. First as a founder, CTO of my first couple companies, and eventually CEO of my last couple companies. I was part of that first Techstars cohort here in Seattle as a mentor, and got to see the program evolve. I've been a mentor ever since for all those programs. I was very involved in some of those early years of Techstars. They were sort of figuring out their own approach to mentorship, and they had some interesting roles that they evolved in the program for mentors who wanted to be more involved. And I was fortunate to have the opportunity to participate at a pretty deep level with Techstars over the years. And as David mentioned, like we met at Techstars, and I met lots and lots and lots of people in my network through my work at Techstars and other accelerators too. So accelerators have been a part of my my startup career the last decade or so. And as David alluded to, recently we launched our own accelerator, and that came out of, I'll just share a little bit about how that accelerator came to be. So the world, as they say, every time you talk to someone in the industry about starting an accelerator, they want to know, does the world really need another accelerator? And I took that question really seriously. Wanted to make sure that I was doing something that was uniquely suited to certain founders, that it could add value. And so, when I thought about creating Accelerator in the first place, it was an extension of the work I had been doing, mentoring and advising literally hundreds of companies over the last about 15 years, really. And I had started back then bringing founders and investors together for dinner and poker, just casually, as a means to learn the game and just to have fun and build relationships, and it stuck. And over the years now, that little humble dinner card game turned into Startup Haven, which now has about 2,300 founders and investors, mostly on the West Coast. We have 7 chapters on the West Coast, all the tech cities, and a number of programs to help support founders and investors as well. It's founder centric, but in the program as well. And after all of that exposure to all of these startups, you start to see patterns. And I had spent a lot of time working pretty deeply with a lot of startups, and thought I saw that there was something that could benefit most startups that I had worked with. And that was this pattern of identifying milestones. When I would meet with a new founder, if I met with any of you, I'll just tell you how it's going to go. I'm going to take 5 minutes. I want to know what your business is. I want to hear how you had the idea, what you think the vision is, what the team is, and then I want to ask you questions about the business. The questions I found myself asking most often were about where you need to be next, not where you're going to be in 7 years when you sell for $500 million, but where are you going to be in 3 months, 5 months, 7 months? And please tell me how you're going to get there. As you all know, Dave said, what a fun journey. And it is. And it's a horrible journey too. It's super hard. Everything's against you. The success metrics in the venture scale startup world are not promising. And so you're up against a lot, and you have to figure out how to get into that 5%, or pick your number. 95% fail, 90% fail. Is it 87? Is it 96? I don't know. A lot of startups don't get there. And a lot of startups don't get there because they don't make the progress they need to toward the next strategic place they need to be, so that they can get to the next stage and the next stage. It's, you have to sort of cross a pond and you don't get to jump over the whole pond. You have to pick lily pad by lily pad by lily pad. And if you don't know where you need to be for this 4 to 6 months, if you can't tell me that in a cogent way, like that's the right place for you to be 4 to 6 months, then I worry about you. And I want you to lose sleep about that, because that is critical for early stage companies, because you don't have infinite time. If you had infinite time, I would never bet against you. I would say all of you are going to be wildly successful if you had infinite time, but you don't. And every week and every month and every year that you don't make critical strategic progress, your startup and yourself as a founder are in more and more and more jeopardy. So as you're thinking about your startups and thinking about how you're going to make progress, I encourage you to think about this. And this is, this is, as I was encouraging founders to think about this, more and more I heard back from founders how important it was for them to hear that message and for them to work on this. But you have to know where you need to be next strategically. Not if you worked really hard in this direction, you'd probably end up somewhere around there. That's not a strategic milestone. Continuing to do what you do and continue to make the kind of progress that you're making and sort of projecting where you might be in 5 months, that's not strategic. Strategic is, where do I need to be so that I can unlock the next thing? Startups are a series of stages. You move from one stage to the next stage to the next stage. And it's often the case that in order to get to some really great place where that you think your startup needs to be, you have to first reach a previous milestone. You don't get to skip. You have to figure out how to get that thing first. And then when you get that, then these customers will work with you. Then these investors will invest with you. Then these partners will do things with you, right? So when you think about your next strategic milestone, the way you know it's the right milestone is because, number one, you can actually do it. Stretch goals are ridiculous. If anybody tells me like, oh, I'm just going to go really, really hard and really, really fast, and I'm just going to be perseverant and persistent, and I'm going to go get it. You know, I'm voting for all of you. I'm going to root every day that all of you are successful, but I'm going to bet more on the ones who say, well, here's where I think I need to be in 5 months. And if I get there, it'll unlock this. And let me tell you why I think that's the right place. And by the way, I can get there. You know, when I work with entrepreneurs who have ambition, which we all should have some ambition, and they set their goals so that they're audacious. And I'm just here to tell you, from my view, you don't get points for audacious. You get, or aggression. You don't get points for any of those things. You get points for being able to execute to a milestone that you can actually reach. If you set a milestone and that you can't tell a cogent story about how to actually get there with the resources you have, with the time that you have, then you're losing the battle. You have to be able to get to the place, strategic milestone. You have to be able to get there in the amount of time that you think it'll take. And that's where the work happens. That's where, once you figure out what that milestone is, now you have to tell a cogent story. What resources do you have that you can deploy over time in a quantitatively validatable way, right? Not, I believe I can, I think I can, it seems like I should, but to be able to say, I'm going to do these kinds of things in these channels at this velocity and so forth to get week by week by week by week to that milestone. If you can't explain how you could do it, it won't be accurate. You won't be right. It's not about being right. It's about just being able to tell a story that's believable to people who understand what you're trying to do, that you could actually do that. If you're not talking to people, and this is a really great forum to have these kinds of conversations, because you're around other entrepreneurs who know things, who had experiences, and can help you validate some of the ideas that you have about how you're going to get to this next place. So as you work on this project of figuring out your next milestone and how you're going to get there, it's really important to identify explicitly the assumptions that you're making. I think I can do this kind of marketing in this on LinkedIn with campaigns like this, with a cost like this, and a conversion rate like this, and revenue like that. And then go talk to people who have done LinkedIn campaigns and say, here's what I think I'm going to do. And if they tell you, I've never seen anybody do that, I don't think you can do that. You shouldn't say, yeah, damn the naysayers, I'm just going to barrel ahead. I'll figure it out as I go. There is a lot of building the plane on the way down, right? You all know the analogy of, being an entrepreneur is jumping off a cliff and building a plane on the way down. True enough, absolutely true. But notice that analogy doesn't say you have to design the plane while you're going down. You can design the plane, gather the materials at the top of the cliff in total safety, then jump off the cliff. You still got to jump off a cliff, and you still got to build a plane on the way down. But if your plan is design the plane on the way down, and I'm going to gather the materials on the way down, and then I'm going to build the plane on the way down, you're biting off a lot that you don't have to bite off. You can say, here's where I want to be, and here's how I'm going to get there. And then go find people who can help you identify your assumptions, quantify them, validate them, and then go for it. Then jump off the cliff. Now, jumping off the cliff, there's a lot of cliffs we jump off of. You all jumped off a big cliff already because you're working on it and you don't have a job, right? Now, when you go to fundraise, you're jumping off a cliff. When you go to into a big marketing campaign where you're betting a lot that this is going to be a successful way to acquire customers, and that you can do it at a velocity, at a cost, and then you invest all those resources, including resources, time, and it doesn't work, you just hit the bottom of the cliff, right? You crashed. So the Accelerator, we actually use that as the sort of the curriculum, right? We work in the early stages of the Accelerator to make sure that every startup that goes in to the accelerator goes through that process of identifying what their next strategic milestone is 4 to 6 months out, and then telling a cogent story, assumptions quantified and validated, to see that's what I should be, that's my North Star. That's what I should be going after. It's how the accelerator works, at least from a curriculum perspective. Any questions?
Wow, that's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. If we were on Clubhouse, like some of the people I've met here, we'd say you're dropping some serious gems. That's Clubhouse lingo. No, this is excellent. I want to ask a question to the group real quick that I think will lead to questions about, what you're talking about, Bob. And that's simply when you, for those here, when you think about what Bob is saying there, what is it that resonates with you, and how are you going about telling that cogent story? What are the steps that you're all taking to do that right now? And anybody jump in.
Well, I'll jump in. For me, talking with other founders, getting involved in organizations and groups like this is great, because you always learn things and you can ask questions and learn from people that have either gathered the materials or put together the plane or on the way down the cliff, whatever. So that's definitely one thing that I'm doing right now.
That's good.
Anybody else?
And Jonathan, the question was about what milestones we have.
Yeah, so Bob was talking about like how, it's really clear, you need to be clear about your cogent story and discussing what your milestones and like why they matter, like what does getting to that next milestone actually mean, and how does that grow from there? So I'm curious, like, what are some ways that people have either gone about doing that or thinking through that? Any examples that you all have of how you've gone about that?
Well, for me, what I tend to do is just show my work, because I'm in a creative space and I've never been a part of a startup. I've never been accepted to, I'm not a startup. I've never been accepted to an accelerator. To be honest, I really don't understand accelerators like I think I should. So I really don't think I tell mine effectively. And I would like more information on how to do that effectively, because if I'm really honest with myself, I don't think I tell it effectively. I don't think that listening to that, it's letting me know that I probably need more help with that. Because what I've traditionally done is I prepared a deck. I've shown financials, which don't really say much. And I show the work that I've done. I had a virtual reality app that I would show, and it kind of appears to be disjointed, not connected. So if I were to be honest, I would say that I need help with that. I have never done that properly, and that could explain why I've never been a part of an accelerator, because I really don't understand. I don't understand it. So that would be my moment of transparency. This is I've never heard that word. What did you say? Kojic?
Cogent,
I don't
yeah.
understand what that is.
Yeah, so a couple things. Thanks for sharing that too, by the way. It's hard, us as founders, and I've been in your seat. So how's it going? You want to say it's going great. Like, startup's great, everything's great, but it's almost never great, right? And I encourage everybody just to be open. No, everybody is struggling. It's easy for virtually anyone. So good on you for being transparent. Now, in terms of accelerators generally, the term accelerate, they want to take companies that are a good fit for the program. Every program has its own idea about what a good fit is. Some focus just on blockchains, some just on B2B SaaS, some just on clean tech, some just on healthcare startups, right? So first, qualifying what a good fit accelerator would be would first of all figure out what kind of startups that accelerator works with, and then figure out for your thesis about your business as a venture scale startup. You can start a bakery, you can start a gas station, you can start any sort of thing that you want to start, and you're an entrepreneur, right? You can start a consulting business and you're an entrepreneur. Mostly accelerators are looking for venture scale startups, right? Ones that can scale quickly and big, so that it makes sense for invest. Now, if you don't need investors, you can just get bank loans or other things. That's great. But to be venture scale, you have to have something that in principle, if it were successful, would be meaningful for the investors to give you money, because they're looking at hundreds of deals. Like, oh, where should I put my money? They're looking for the ones that they love the founder, understand the business, think it's a good market, blah, 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 but also that is, best suited for a return on their capital, right? So you have to be able to talk the lingo of the accelerator. Well, what do they care about? Some accelerators care also about the impact that you have, right? It's not always only about, but if you're not thinking yourself as a founder about how do I generate a return for investors, then you're probably not a venture scale startup yet, or at least not a venture scale founder. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, in my own opinion, in all my experience, I think, really great entrepreneurs who do really great businesses that are not venture scale often have a better life and are just as successful or more successful, because the chances of success are greater than all of us who are trying to, hit home runs every time at bat. So, so any case, think about what a good fit for an accelerator is. Make sure that you fit, that your company is a good fit for that accelerator. And then what they're going to try to do is get you to accelerate over 3 months, typically 3 to 6 months. And they're going to give you mentors. Some will have a kind of a curriculum. We have this curriculum around cogency, which I'll explain in a second. They typically at the end want you to pitch to investors. That's a really common trajectory. Not all of them do this, but many of them, you come in for 3 months, you work on your business model. Is this a good, how can I make this better? You work with a bunch of mentors to help you figure that out. And then in the middle of the program, you're sort of applying what you learned. If it's a 3-month program, think of it as month 1, month 2, and month 3. Month 1, you're going to learn a lot from a lot of smart people about how to make your business better. In the middle, you're going to spend a lot of time, all your time, executing on that, making the changes that you need to make that a better business. And then in the last month, you're going to prepare to pitch in front of investors on demo day. So that's a really common trajectory. Some don't have demo days. Some are 6 months. Some are virtual. Some are, on premises and so forth. But that's a typical trajectory. Figure out how to make your business better, work on making it better, and then prepare, for the next thing, which is most often probably pitching to investors for capital, right? This new idea, whether it's a pivot or just a small change, now you're going to go get money and try to scale that. So that's what Accelerator does. So, finding the right fit for your company and the stage that you're at. Some accelerators will tend to have more advanced startups. Some will have more earlier startups, right? So look at all the accelerator programs. Don't just think, oh, I got to apply for Accelerator.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 sec. I'm curious, has anyone here applied to an accelerator before? I know that this is an information session on it, but has anybody actually applied? So I see 2 people.
I've applied. I've never gotten accepted. I've applied, but I mean, hearing all of this might explain why I've never gotten accepted.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because so the last time I applied to an accelerator was when I was really early in my founder journey. And I just kind of like, was like, well, they'll take me and now, 7-8 years into startup founder land. It's like, oh, I would have never even opened that message that I sent, back then. So, I get it.
Yeah. And remember too, accelerators are a competitive selection process. You're not applying for a loan in which, if you're qualified, you get the loan, right? If you're qualified accelerator, you still might not get in because they're only going to take 10 and they got 400 applications. So lots and lots of good startups who would have been a good fit don't get in because they weren't judged as like, well, of all the top 30, we can only take 10. And here's the 10 we're picking. The other 20 might have still been great companies and could have been a good case, right? Which is again why I encourage you all, and this goes for fundraising too. When you're raising capital, you should not just pitch any investor who will listen. You need to find who are the best investors for me, who writes checks into companies at my stage, in my sector, with my traction, right? you spend a lot of time, waste a lot of time trying to get coffee meetings with investors who just, they're not a good fit. And it's same with accelerators. Find the ones that are a good fit. And I encourage you all, don't think of it as funding. Some accelerators give you funding, some don't, some give you more, some give you less. When you get into a good accelerator, the money is the least important thing. It's the least valuable thing of an accelerator. What's really valuable mostly is the mentors. The people, you know, a really good program has really good mentors, and they will help you build your business. It's the most important part of an accelerator. Yeah, maybe you get a little bit of capital as well, and you get to pitch to investors at the end. And if you're at just the right stage, that can be golden, right? There's nothing like day and pitching to 400 investors. But remember, as you're looking to get into an accelerator, have a clear idea of where you're at and where you need to go next. And is this the kind of accelerator that you think can get you to that place you need to be next? Now, again, if you don't know where you think you need to be next, it's hard to make a lot of decisions in an early startup, right? And there are lots of shiny objects, more opportunities than you could ever take on. And it's easy to get distracted and spread yourself too thin, which when I mentioned before about strategic milestones and a cogent story, let me tell you what cogent means. And I struggle with this because I use this term and I know it's an unusual term. Partly I want it to be unusual. Partly I want people to say, wait, what is that? Cogent just means rational, logical, compelling to the mind. Like, oh, and it makes sense. You get it. You know, the math works. The assumptions are reasonable. They're quantified. They're validated by people. Like if you were to take your business and go to someone who's done your kind of business before and say, here's what I plan on doing. And they say, gosh, you know, that's great. I think you could do that. That's good validation. If they say, wait, you're going to do what? No, that's not how it works. It never goes that way. No, here's what you don't know. What's coming is this and this and this. And you're totally ignoring that. So your story is not cogent because you have a miracle happens right in the middle of it that nobody who's knowledgeable about your business would agree that you could just do that, right? So you want to tell a cogent story, and why I say story as opposed to plan. It is a plan of a kind. Plan sort of implies it's accurate and it's right going to happen as you lay it out. You have to acknowledge that there's so many things that are out of your control in the startup world. The best you can do is cogent. The best you can do is that's rational and reasonable, and people who understand what I'm trying to do would agree that that's a rational plan. If you can't find people who agree with you, that you've first of all identified all the assumptions, right? That you have sufficient knowledge of those things that you can account for them. If you haven't done that, you're shooting in the dark. You should lose sleep over that, right? As a founder, when the odds are against you, you should lose sleep if you can't tell me what you're assuming must be true in order to get this milestone. And then quantify them, validate them. You can do tests. You do have some, access to expertise in your own industry because you're probably familiar with it in the first place. You can go find experts, advisors who can help you figure out, is that really possible? Can you really do that with the resources that you have? And it's often the case where we have an idea as a founder, like, oh, here's where I want to be. And all I have to do is raise some money so I can go do that. If I only had money, then I could go be successful. And that is it's a recipe for disaster. You should have two plans. One is, here's what I'm going to do if I don't raise money, because you have to continue to make progress, right? And a lot of fundraising is about the story that you're exposing to investors while you talk to them. You don't pitch an investor and then they write a check. You pitch an investor and then they have a follow-up call and then they go talk to some people. And then, maybe 3 or 4 months later, you get a wire transfer into your bank from that investor. It's several months telling a story that the investors are watching. And they're saying, oh, you said you were going to do this in my next month when I have the catch-up call with you. Let's see if you did what you said you were going to do. Explain that. So that's why it's really important for you to have a one trajectory that says, here's what I'm going to do while I don't have any money. Then when I get money, here's what I would do with that money, right? There's a day zero when the money hits the bank and you don't know when that's going to happen. But the absolute best thing you can do is to keep working on the business and keep making progress, get some, even if it's small traction, things are going up and to the right, even if they're small numbers. are super, super important to the story you're telling to investors. Because if you only get so many updates with an investor where you say, well, yeah, this didn't happen and we're still where we were last time, and you try to make it sound good, but the reality is you're kind of waiting around for them to give you money so that you can be good. They want to see that you can be good, scrappy, right? This is where you be aggressive. Like, use the resources you have, deploy them in the best possible way you have, and make progress.
Well, I thought it would be interesting just to share an example of a company that, with regard to our accelerator, they're a good fit. So this is a company that we talked to just yesterday. They're full-time founders. There's 3 of them who they've actually been founders before, so they've worked together before. They've had exits, and in fact, in some ways, they've got a lot going for them as a startup. But surprisingly, these are guys that are a team that's quite experienced. When you ask them to tell their story about growth, it looks something like this. In the next year, we plan on being able to run 1,000 campaigns, and that's going to lead to $600,000 or $1 million in revenue, right? We're very excited about that prospect. Well, then you get into okay, how many campaigns have you run so far? Well, we launched our product right at the start of COVID, and in the last quarter, we were able to run 24 campaigns. Well, how are you going to get from 24 campaigns to 1,000 campaigns in the next year? And we have an internship program with some kids on campus, universities, and we've got we've got a CMO as one of our founders who's not on the call right now. She's really good at marketing, and okay, but what is your cogent plan? What are the assumptions you're going to make to get to that goal? And the fact is, it's too far out. Hey, how can you get to a certain number in 4 to 6 months that is reasonable? That people, based on what you've done already, and based on what smart people who look at your business would say is a reasonable expectation. And so even though those people are really experienced founders, they could benefit from our particular accelerator. They're a good fit for our particular accelerator because we would work with them on creating that next milestone, right? Really drilling down in and getting concrete about what the milestone should be, what the assumptions should be, what the velocity should be, what a reasonable velocity is, as opposed to, we are going to make $1 million in the next 12 months, and we're going to do 10,000 campaigns. And the fact is, I think Bob and I, we both kind of looked at them and said, look, how do you know you're going to do that? How do you know you can even accomplish that? You've only done 25 campaigns in an entire quarter. So that's an example. And I want to give that example because it talks a little bit about the milestone process and how we think about it. And it also talks about fit. Accelerators are about fit. And I will say, at the high level, having been an employee of Techstars, and that was now 7 years ago. I left in 2013, but I can tell you, and in fact, it's only become more, even though they have more offerings, it has become very competitive. And there's kind of 2 things that any accelerator is going to look for. One is commitment. So if you have a team that is part-time on this project, then chances are you're not even going to get out of the pile to be considered. You need to have a full-time team. You need to be 100% focused on this as what you're trying to make happen. You need to basically be, as Brad Feld would say, obsessed about it. Number 2, it helps to have more than one founder. Solopreneurs, it's proven that solopreneurs are not typically as successful as two-person founder teams, 3-person founder teams. And look, I'm not saying you can't be successful, but the numbers show that you're more likely to be successful. And as a result, if you're looking to get into an accelerator, you should have that profile. In fact, if you are a solopreneur now, I would urge you to find someone else to be part of your founding team. Not just to get into an accelerator, but just to help increase your your chances of success. A lot of people get hung up on quote unquote the idea as being important. And what I'll tell you about the majority of accelerators is it's really about the team, because they know that when you come into the accelerator, chances are you are going to pivot. Some cases it's minor pivots here and there. Some cases it's major pivots. One of the companies that that I would say was, one of my most successful companies out of my accelerators, they were in existence for 90 days. And on the 91st day, this is the team that I left to join. On that 91st day after demo day, they got an offer they couldn't refuse from Microsoft. And for them, when they came into the accelerator, they're like, oh, we know exactly what we're going to do. And, through mentoring and frankly, pushing very hard on them to go out and talk to customers to find out, are there customers that would actually buy this thing you want to build? And they were builders. These guys were some of the best developers I've ever seen. And I spent 15 years at Microsoft. Incredible. But they were smart enough to know that it's not just about building stuff. It's about building something that people want. And in their case, they pivoted, a major pivot. And that major pivot led to great success. Another company that went through my program, major pivots 4 times before finding their way. So, great teams are able to do those pivots and survive and go through the ups and downs of startupdom. So that's I just wanted to share my thoughts on, in general, what does it take to get into an accelerator? Those are some sort of givens that, and if your idea is just wacky, then chances are you're going to get cut from the list. I know probably 70% of the companies that applied to the accelerators I was involved in with the Techstars, we didn't even get to the team because we thought the idea was just, didn't make any sense at all.
So Dave, what is your background? You said you're affiliated with Techstars, or?
Yeah, sorry, you might have missed that, Alex.
Sorry,
So I got introduced into the startup world back in probably, I guess it was 2010, Bob, maybe 2009. It's been a while now. And I was a mentor for Techstars Seattle. I'm in Seattle.
Okay. Cool.
I then was recruited by Techstars to run their first ever foray into corporate accelerators. So in actually working with a corporation to run an accelerator. Not so ironically, the corporation that they did that with was Microsoft, which I was a good fit for them because I had worked at Microsoft and I knew how to sort of work the Microsoft system.
Based out of Seattle, you said?
Yeah. So
cool.
I ran
Awesome.
Microsoft's first ever accelerators for Techstars, the Microsoft Accelerator for Connect, and then the Microsoft Accelerator for Azure.
Nice. Yeah, so actually, so I'm the founder and CEO of a climate tech startup called Cascadia Carbon. We build essentially tech-enabled tools which empower individuals to join the fight against climate change by engaging them in like a collaborative and productive marketplace where individuals don't only purchase offsets, but they can also produce offsets from their ecological choices. So if they bike to work or drive an EV to visit family, we have an app which essentially gives them social credit for those offsets. And I started as a solo founder, but basically our North Stars is trying to solve climate change. It's like the biggest problem we face is a threat multiplier, and so we need both top down and bottom up action in order to solve it. If we just do, like, for example, policy changes, it's not going to get us to where we need to go. If we just have corporations address the issue, it's also not going to fully, get us to the point at which we solve the climate crisis. So we need both, bottom up individuals actually making individual ecological decisions as well as, corporate buy-in, political buy-in. So we have that North Star of climate sustainability, essentially trying to solve climate change or trying to help individuals solve climate change.
Hey, Alex, can I jump in a little bit? So, I love that you have that notion of a North Star. That is a very big thing. And to use an overused metaphor, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So if your North Star is solve climate change, that's a remarkably hard problem, and it takes a lot of different approaches. and your approach is unique and potentially powerful. To get from here to there, to have your impact, and for all founders, I'll say you should have this notion of a personal impact report that you think about for yourself, and especially for someone like you, Alex, who has as your North Star this very big important problem. So think now about, and I'm curious if you have an idea about what, in order for your piece to be successful, for you to have an impact on climate change, where do you need to be? Do you have a sense for 4 to 6 months out, I will have built this thing, I will have this many users, I will have done this many things, quantifiable, measurable, countable. And if you were to do those things, it would unlock the next thing that you need. If you think about, and I want you to think about that as a North Star, not just the big North Star. You have a series of North Stars. North Star is what you're focused on right now. Of all the opportunities you have, of all the things that you could do, what is the very, very limited focus set of things that you are going to do? Because if you were to roll the clock forward 4 to 6 months, whatever that date is, and I encourage you all, don't say, I'm going to be here in 4 to 6 months. Say, I'm going to be here July 17th at 5 p.m., right? Have a very definitive date and time in mind, because that's the only way you can actually be held accountable for the assumptions, right? Because if it's kind of mushy, it'll move. You'll just move it a little bit, right? It's okay. It just moved a little bit. I learned some new stuff and now it's different, right? In order for this to be a real North Star, the thing that you focus on, it should be definitive. And so for you, when you think, if you have a notion of that now, I'd be interested. And remember, these milestones, you shouldn't have 7 milestones. You should have 1. If you have 2, that's okay. If they're sort of, they work together and they're achievable and so forth. But in 25 words or less, what is your 1 milestone that you're going to reach in 4 to 6 months? And is it 4 or is it 6 or where is it?
Yeah, so our upcoming milestone, the next one, is converting our provisional patent for crowdsourced carbon offsets into a non-provisional USPTO by middle of February.
Okay, so that's really close and that's underway. So that's not a strategic milestone. That's an operational milestone, right? That's a goal. That's a thing that you're achieving. That will unlock, that would have been your strategic goal 4 months ago or 5 months ago.
Okay.
So
that's an operational. Okay.
Yes. So, and if that were actually a strategic, then you should be able to tell me by February, we'll have that patent and that will unlock the next thing. So once you have that patent, 4 months out, 5 months out, what's the next strategic milestone then for you? Because you have this one coming up that, if it's just February, that's not a North Star. That's going to happen. You're working on it. It's going to be done. Like, what's 4 to 6 months out?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think the one thing I'm good at as a founder, I'm not good at many things, but the one thing I'm good at is recruiting other people to sign on to my vision and work towards it. For example, I got an accountant for our US-based company to sign on to do all of our books for equity only.
So that's good, but that's not a strategic milestone.
Absolutely. Okay, so the strategic milestone, and the reason I'm not answering this directly is because I don't actually have a formulated strategic milestone for 4 to 6 months out. I know that sort of a longer strategic milestone is to get our app up and running and in people's hands.
Okay, good. So work backwards. What are the big things that have to happen for you to have a live app, right? And then you'll make choices. Like if the goal is launch our app and get it in people's hands, how do you measure that, right? What app with what features for what users, and how many would be success? If you spent 5 months and you launched some app and 7 people used it, is that a success? Maybe
less of a success. No, that's.
But you and this is a good. Thank you for engaging in this conversation, Alice, because this is what every one of you should be doing. You should all be thinking about, gosh, what do I have to achieve that's strategic? And remember,
Bob, if you guys are willing, is everybody willing to take 30 seconds and just say what they think their next strategic milestone is?
That'd be great.
Yeah, jump in, whoever wants to try. And look, this isn't, you know, this isn't a pass fail thing. It's more just, it's a great exercise to go through, especially
Sure.
with other people.
I'm happy to jump in and see if I'm
Yeah.
aligned.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, no one's ever asked me that question, so thank you for the opportunity. I guess my next strategic milestone is to have my go-to-market finalized. Like, I'm going through the customer, like, what's our value proposition, like everything, how we're going to test it out, planned. Is that good?
Yeah. So that's, will that take you 4 months to do?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, good.
Because
so we evaluate
realistically,
milestone. Yeah. So if the milestone that you have in mind is less than 4 months, it's hard for that to be strategic. So for you, I think if you had and I'll use the word cogent, right? Cogent, you should always be thinking about all the campaigns that you do should be cogent. Your milestone should be cogent. So if you think about this go-to-market plan, the plan you put together will have baked into it a milestone. It's not like, oh, here's what we're going to do. Here's the people we're going to reach. We're going to use it. It should be highly quantitative, so that when you're building that plan with some assumptions around what you want the success of that plan to look like. So 4 months out, 5 months out, if you were to execute on that plan, you should be able to say, this is how much traction we'll have. This is how many users, what the cost of acquisition will be, what the engagement will be. Your go-to-market plan should have baked into it an objective to reach a certain milestone. In this case, probably something around users or revenue or engagement or something like that, right?
yes, for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe my next strategic milestone is to launch.
So you haven't launched your product yet?
I mean, we have a very hacked together MVP, and we're building on Bubble now, so it's going to be more scalable. So we're rebuilding it. It's still going to be an MVP. I still consider it very MVP. I wouldn't even consider this next launch not MVP.
Good. Well, so
always be launching.
Yeah, and always be measuring, right? The toward an objective. You don't have to have a fancy product to start to get users, to start to get even customers and revenue.
Yeah, we have that miniature.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I mean,
so think about
or more.
Yes. So now put a number on it, right? So when you say something like we're going to launch our product,
yeah,
that's not quantified, right?
Sure. I mean, the number that I'm looking for, that's kind of some of the questions I've been asking on some of these founder circles. And I'm sorry, I don't want to take over the conversation. I know a lot of people on here want to talk to Bob and David, but it seems like as I'm doing this go to market with the planning and the numbers and looking at the prices and everything and the different avenues, then I'll be able to say like, okay, a good number is like, if I hit 100, then I can start to really build up my averages of what this will cost me, to scale or whatever. So
yeah, that's good. Yeah. So whatever that number is, as you're building out this plan, and I'll say, and then we'll move on to the next person, but I'll say it's really common, us as founders, we try to figure out what would good marketing be. And so we think about it generally in terms of good marketing. Like we know who our customer is, we know what the channel is, we know what our tactics are going to be. We're going to go do this thing, and then we'll see, right? And everything is just one big fat test, right? Because we just can't know. And so as you set that number, make sure that you're talking to people who've done what you're doing in those channels before, and say, I want to get to 100, and have somebody tell you who knows what they're talking about. Yeah, you could do 100, be a stretch, but you could do 100. If they say, you could do 500. Why do it this way instead? And like, oh my God, I never thought of that, right? Or they say, look, if you can get 10 that way, I've done this before. That's super hard. You're not thinking about this, blah, blah, blah. So quantify. If it's not quantified, you can't measure it. You don't know if you're successful. So that's, but thank you for sharing. Let's see, anybody else? Randy, you've got your microphone on.
Oh yeah, hi guys, thank you for your time. I'm in Southern California. In California, my industry is in hospitality specifically. And so we're kind of in pause state for restaurants to do openings. And in fact, the only thing we're doing now over here is to-go industry. We've pivoted our company to do an events tailored around dining, which we call Dine-in Domes. And Dine-in Domes is a way of doing a COVID safe and COVID prevention measures built into the dining experience, because you're literally enclosed in a plastic dome. But that allows us to do it on the beach, allows us to do it on a park, any location that we can have table service. The reason for this is because of back probably in your cities, you used to have Taste of LA, Taste of whatever, and you'd have these events where you go to restaurant. Imagine that's where we use our application to have 5 to 10 different restaurants that a consumer can order from and have it delivered table service at one time and seating. So you order your steak from this place, your sushi for appetizer at this place, your dessert over here. And it's like the taste of whatever, but it's all delivered here. That's a different way of selling to a restaurant instead of going and saying, use our software. And now we're telling them, join this event, and they're using our software automatically. The challenge we have in California, and this is where I've been approached by other areas of the, Maria, or the students that, like states like Florida, go over to Miami, they're open, go to other locations to do this event, because California, we're on lockdown. So what would be a good suggestion, I guess, from you guys? Do I sit and wait in California or just jump ship and go and launch? We already have our application. We actually have some national brands using it, such as what's it called, Wahoo Fish and Taco, there, and Roscoe's Chicken, or Roscoe's waffles.
So for where you are right now, so that's good. I think I more or less understand your product, your market. So you measure your success based on the number of restaurants, the number of transactions, right? The number of orders that happen. And regionally, as an app, I don't know if your app easily transports, is there sort of a critical mass you have to have somewhere in order to have it be successful? You have to have enough restaurants or enough users in a geography in order for it to be, a good solution. So just thinking about the things that you think, given where we are in COVID, and you're in a really tough spot, because, in 6 months, a bunch of people will have the vaccine, things will change, it'll be better, but there's new variants. So you don't know if that's going to cause more trouble. Like, it's a really uncertain time for you. So if you think about your runway, and so for you, 4 to 6 months might be a long time, right? If you had a stable environment, I would strongly encourage you to think about 4 to 6 months. For you right now, I think more about, what are you going to do month after month after month? Because you're going to you have a runway, and how long is your runway? Like if stuff doesn't get materially better, how long can you keep doing this? And what do you need to do? Like, you're not in strategic, in my, drive-by, session here, it strikes me that you might not be in a stable environment to have strategic, you're highly impacted by COVID, both as an opportunity, right? Hopefully, but mostly not. So for you, think about what you need to extend your runway. What are the things you can do? Not that are big vision and gosh, should I go to other states? Like, what can you do just to continue to make progress? And if that means going to different states, that's great. But I don't necessarily, I don't know enough to know, how you should handle that. But just be thinking about how can you extend your runway to get through to the other side. And that could be 6 months, 9 months, a year. And just keep making progress. Just keep everything, the numbers going up, number of customers, number of orders, even if it's small, just keep it going. And if you spread yourself too thin, are you going to exhaust your resources, or do you have plenty of resources? And we're just trying to figure out what the next 5 states are to go to. Or is there a strategy where you just, continue to extend your runway until you get enough certainty? That's just an observation. I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Thank you. We're market ready. We're already in the market. So it really comes down to a question. Do I change my mindset and say that we're not opening at where we're located? We're opening in a different state. There are elements, there are different areas in Southern California that are the rebels, like Orange County. They're open, they have segments. The problem with that for me is the shaming part in social. In other words, we launch and we do an event, and then we get all this backlash of you guys should be closed, you're not thinking of the community and all this. And I don't know if that's a good approach to if we should be associated to that. So that's why
it's a hard question. So think about, as you think about another state, and in the accelerator, using this cogency milestone methodology, we do the strategic milestone, and then there's a lot of small sort of models that we do that we're still looking for We're still looking for quantification and assumptions and a model, right? And so for you, I would say build a model that says, okay, we're going to go into Florida. What does that look like? How long does it take? How much does it cost? What are the goals for traction? So we know that it was worthwhile. And can we really get there? So if you think, yeah, it's going to take us 2 months to launch in Florida, and we think we'll have 20 restaurants and 2,000 transactions in 60 days, pardon me.
Yeah.
Then run that backwards. It's like, can you really do that? And find other people who understand what you're trying to do and have them say, oh yeah, you could do that. Right. But build a plan over time. Spreadsheets are wonderful for this, by the way.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to get launched in Florida in 4 weeks or 4 months, get a spreadsheet and do every week for the next 4 months and say, here's what would happen. And here's what would happen all the way to the point where you hit that whatever that metric is, 2,000 orders by, 100 customers. And then work backward. Can you really do that? And then you have something to go to people and say, Bob, here's what I think I can do. And it's concrete. It's like, it's a quantified assumption. And I can say, you know what, from what I know, this is going to take longer than you think, or that's going to cost more, or the conversion rate's not going to be that high. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But quantify it, put it in a spreadsheet so you can keep track of it. It's impossible. Absolutely. I've been doing this for 20 years. It's impossible to do in your head. You've got to put it in a spreadsheet.
No, it's easy. It's easy to do it in your head and have it actually be wildly incorrect.
Oh yeah, I'll try. Yeah.
So Randy, as we move, in the interest of time, I would say if you could make what you're doing COVID friendly as opposed to a negative COVID thing, I don't know enough about what you're doing, but it seems like there might be a way that this could actually be a thing where people look at it as a great way to eat lots of different foods and have a good time doing it that is COVID safe.
Hey, can I ask one quick question, Jonathan? I know you're in Seattle and Washington. I remember the early days of COVID. Washington was known for taking the temperature of patrons before they can dine. Is that still going on at other restaurants, or is that just?
Our restaurants are closed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, restaurants are closed, but if you go to a dentist, if you go to any place, they take your temperature. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So Bob, I wrote down the difference between operational milestones and strategic milestones. I think is really important. And so I have these two milestones, and I think that one of them is operational, one of them is strategic, and they relate to each other. And
Throw it out.
Okay. So a 4 to 6 month strategic milestone would be to, I'm not sure which one is operational. I'll just give you both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Throw it out.
Yep. Building a referral system into the app, which allows individuals to get their friends to join the app.
Okay. Okay, good. So it's not strategic.
What's the other one though?
Yeah,
the other one is more quantified. It's get 10 people to tell 2 friends about the app.
Okay. So getting 10 friends to tell 2 people is too small to be strategic, because getting 10 people to share with 2 people, it doesn't unlock the next big thing, right? Oh, if we just had 10, if we had 10, 10's the right number, we've got to have 10 people do this for 2, and then this other thing will be possible. If you say launch this referral system, then I want to know, it's got to be quantified. So you say by this date, we're going to launch this system, and we're going to, when we launch it, within 10 days, within 20 days, within 30 days, whatever, we're going to have this many referrals, that many referrals, and this other number of referrals. Right? You don't get to just build something because you think it would be really great. You have to build something with the expectation that when you build it, it will lead to something. And if you had a referral system that actually worked, and you said, well, if I build a referral system and we got 100 referrals in the first 10 days after launching it, we think that would be a success, right? Now, when you build backwards, it's not whether or not you can launch software. I think you can launch software. Pick a feature, you'll launch it. I total trust that you can do that. Should you do it? I don't know. It depends on what your expectations are. So now when you say, I'm going to build this system, this referral system, and when I do that, I will get 100 in the first 10 days, and I'll get 200 in the next 10 days, and I'll get 500 in the next 10 days. Then that's the thing you can quantify and go talk to people like Dave, who says, oh, okay, so how many users do you have? What's their engagement rate? How are you going to market this? What's the promotion look like? How many people are going to see it? How many people are going to click it? How many people are going to convert? How many people are going to do this? How many people are going to do that? Right? Then you can dig into the numbers and say, it's not whether or not you can launch something, it's should you launch it. And whether or not you should launch it means is judged by whether or not it will be successful. Like, will it achieve the goal that you want? And just adding new things that are good is not, I mean, yeah, you should quantify when you launch that, what you expect it to be, and drill into those numbers, because you can launch software. But, and what you'll discover in having that conversation with people who understand referral is, oh, no, don't build it like that. Build it like this. And don't forget to do this other thing. You're like, oh, yeah. Oh, that's much better, right? So the thing that you release should be something that will lead to the result that you want. And you should be critical about what success would be. I mean, if you spend 4 months working on a software enhancement and you launch it and you get 10 referrals, was it really worth it? Like, oh yeah, but it's gonna do more later. Well, will it? I don't know. Maybe it won't. Like, why do you think it will? Like, tell me what those numbers are. How are people going to behave in a way that you can quantify, and that's a good thing for you to do?
So am I correct in thinking that strategic milestones, should both of those have quantified numbers behind them? Or
absolutely. Everything you say you're going to do should be quantifiable. Absolutely everything should be quantifiable. How do you know if you were successful? If you just say, well, we're going to launch software. Okay.
So will launching software be the strategic milestone, and then the operational milestone would be, getting 100, 200, 500?
No, more the other way around. Like, you're in the software business. Like, what you do is you launch software. Like, you do this, you do that. It's a routine thing, right? You're gonna do a bunch of that, right?
So question that's the operational.
Yeah. So question is, if it's strategic, it unlocks the next thing, right? If you build this system, in principle, a referral system should unlock like a whole bunch of new users, right? Which would be a good thing for you to have, I assume. Yeah. But if you launch that software and it doesn't do that, then it was not a good thing to do. So don't worry as much about launching a thing. Worry about launching a thing that achieves a result, right? Software for software's sake, who could ever say like a referral system, that's a bad idea? I don't know. But
only if it works.
Yeah, it's only a good idea,
quantify.
Right? Remember too, strategic milestones are the right next milestone, not a possible next milestone, but the right next one. So if you were to launch that system, right, work on that, deploy your resources, your attention on that thing, that means there's lots of other stuff that you cannot spend time on or resources on because you have limited time and resources. So is that the right next thing? Or is there something else you should do instead of that? And you will not be able to judge that unless you can quantify and say, yeah, but if I build this referral system, then I'll get 7,000 new users. And if I get 7,000 new users, that will actually lead to revenue, or that will lead to a partnership, or that allows
more revenue.
So as a strategic milestone, it has to be the right next thing, not a next thing, right? Because you're assuming that the referral system is the right next thing. It's a next thing. It's only the right next thing if there's no other thing that's better for you to do than to do that.
Well, you can also have multiple strategic milestones. Like we're applying to Techstars, we're working on our patent, we're trying to implement this referral.
Yeah, you got to walk and chew gum. But look, if you decide that the right next milestone for you is to do a referral system because you've quantified it and you validated your assumptions that you're going to get this many users from it, and what that would unlock is this really important thing, including things like your application to accelerators like Techstars being taken more seriously, right? If you go to them right now, you say, oh, I want to get into Techstars and I want to build a referral system. Like, oh, okay, well, come to us after you've built the referral system and you have those 7,000 new users. So think about, you have to do a whole bunch of stuff that's operational. You just got to keep the business going. But if you have a strategic milestone, something, and this, I'll tell you right now, one of the biggest of thinking this way is it does give you that North Star, that thing that you can stop being distracted by all.
Everybody rallies around it. Absolutely. It's like, the thing.
We're doing this. But what about this? No, we're doing this. It's the right next thing. We're doing this.
Yeah. So, you know what, in the interest of time, you know what, Jay Smith, I'm sorry, I don't remember what your first name is, or Lizzie, do either one of you guys want to throw out what your most important next milestone is? I'd love to hear from you. I mean, if you're interested, no pressure.
Yeah, I can go on what I think ours is.
jump.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go. Lizzie, you can go. Lizzie's hands was raised before mine, so I'll go after Lizzie. Sure.
Okay, thank y'all. Can you hear me? By the way, my phone internet is
Yes, you're good.
Okay, so I'm Lizzie. Thank you guys so much for this. This is so valuable, and it's funny that we're talking about this because this is exactly what I needed to hear for strategic milestones. And for us, I think our strategic milestone would be in the next 4 months, working to get at least 5 more pilots going so that we have our customers able to test what we have, our first product right now, and really understand what the value is for them, and then being able to utilize that data to then go to advertisers and partner with them for the next big thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's got a lot of good making qualities. It's tied to a date. I would encourage you to pick a date 4 months out, whatever that date is, April or May, whatever that specific date, so that you can drive yourself to actually get those pilots going by that specific date. But that was really good. I like that it
unlocks the next thing.
Unlocking a next thing, right? Get those pilots. You'll learn enough. Then, and I would encourage you to quantify what advertisers would expect in order for you to learn the stuff that you want to learn to make it interesting to advertisers.
Yeah.
Take what you know about what advertisers want, certain number of eyes or certain kinds of users or whatever it is, and map that to those pilots so that you make sure that those pilots give you the data that you know, because you can know before you go to those advertisers, you probably already know, here's what they would want to see. If we can get 5 pilots to demonstrate those things, then they'll want to talk to us. So make those things coordinated. So you're not just doing 5 pilots and just see what you learn. You will learn a lot, but also make sure that you're doing things with those pilots that will get you the answer that you already know or can know what those advertisers care about, right? So that they would want to work with you after you've done those pilots, right? So yeah, I think that sounds like a really good, I don't know if it's the right next one, or maybe there's other things you guys could do, but that sounds like in principle, it does what a strategic milestone should do.
Lizzie, what do you guys do? Can you give us the 30-second elevator on what you do?
Yeah, for sure. We have touchless digital vending machines to get products to women in high trafficked areas and understand their media buying power as well.
Okay, good. No, I mean, that seemed to fit the model. Maybe you've benefited from the rest of the discussion, so that's great.
Hey, Bob, imagine Moon Tango as a vending machine in the airport or stadium. That's what Lizzie does.
Yeah, Lizzie, have we talked?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, so I know another entrepreneur that I talked to some months ago.
Who?
I think is doing something very similar. I'll have to look her up.
Don't worry. Don't let that bother you.
Yeah. No, competition is good. Don't worry about that.
That's a good sign.
Trying to do the same thing. In fact, if anything, you want to talk to them and find out what they're doing, what worked and what didn't work, and you'll probably help each other.
Sure.
It's a weird thing, that's a Techstars thing that I learned. As a Microsoft guy, I was very competitive, right? You're competitive. And what I came to realize is that everybody is trying to do the same thing in a lot of cases, and there's a huge pie. When you're a startup, you just need to get a slice of that pie to get going. And oftentimes, and we would connect people in our accelerator with other Techstars companies that had gone down the same path, in some cases been successful, and in some cases not. Just because, today when you help somebody else, chances are that's going to come back to you in tenfold. I know that seems hard to believe, but it's
no, I know it's true. I appreciate it.
Jay, would you please tell me what the J stands for?
Janine.
Oh, you have to unmute, my dear.
Janine.
Janine, I'm sorry. I know you said that at the beginning. I just didn't get it.
No worries.
Janine, why don't you dive in?
Sure. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for assisting us with our individual companies. So my company is Sorority Records. It is a digital record label and animation studio. It is already on the market. I already have clients. I'm able to pay all of my bills through Sorority Records. Nice. I sell animations, and I have already developed a virtual reality app that I took out of the store because times changed. This was in 2016, and prices have soared. So I'm basically endearing myself to my market with animations and taking on animation clients. And it's a long road to glory because, I mean, I don't want to spill my own tea, but I make between 7 and 10 grand a month on a good month. If I'm banging, it's like 10 grand. If it's not banging, then it can be as low as 4 grand. It could be abysmal around here. But I have stuck to my plan, and I've been doing this. I do have a co-founder, my dad. He keeps me balanced. He talks to me every day. He vets every client, answers every question. And what we basically decided to do is just keep putting out animations, keep working with people who want animations, and save money. Or I guess save is just, I don't like the word save, but put together money to create games and animations that we can take to the larger market. But I do think that people underestimate the cost of animations. Because I do animations and I work with a team of animators, a lot of times people don't understand, like they kind of come at me lowballing. I have clients who, you know, they offer me a little bit of money. It's like, you can't really do anything with $500 in this market. Or they want me to work for free. It's just wild. But my ultimate goal is to build a name in the animation space and get into the gaming market. So it's a long road. I've been on it since 2017. I have clients now that I'm working with. For some reason, I've had a lot of success with the medical industry and the dental specifically. I'm working with a lady now who's a geriatric tooth fairy. So we have an initiative where she has partnered with Crest and Oral-B, which I guess is Procter and Gamble. And she pairs dentists with long-term care facilities. And they have a van that they go and help senior citizens with their teeth. A lot of senior citizens are very sad and lonely because they've lost their teeth, so they don't want to socialize. So it's a lot of things that I'm able to do with my animation that can help people while I'm building my portfolio so that I can make a big splash with the animation, possibly partner with Netflix, but that takes money. So,
all right, cool. So, but wait, let me stop you there. You just said Netflix, right? Yeah. That'd be pretty cool, right? That's probably like, that's a big thing. Take a while. You got to figure out how to get there. If your goal is to make that big splash, I would encourage you now to quantify that. How many, what kind, right? So what kind of customer would be your next level customer on the way to Netflix? Like what would you think the pathway is? You're in it for the long haul. You know it's a long journey. What is in 4 to 6 months, pick a date in 4 to 6 months where you will have X number of customers of a certain kind, or X number of dollars in revenue from a customer of a certain kind? Or is there a certain kind of animation, a certain industry that you think is the right next place? So don't just go where the market takes you. Think about controlling where you want to end up, and try to plot a course to, in 5 months on that date, I want to have, it's not Netflix, but it's this other customer that you think you could get to. And it's the right customer that you think, if I can get there, then I'll be known as the one who does this thing for this industry, healthcare, whatever it is, right? So pick a goal, a milestone, where if you had, X number of clients like this, paying you this much for this kind of animation, whatever it is, and then see if you can plot a course there, right? The course is more predictable if you actually chart it, right? You've got a great thing, congratulations too, on just having a revenue generating business with lots of upside potential. But chart that course, figure out not what you think your revenue would be, but for you, it strikes me that it's not just about the revenue right now. It's about getting to those other kinds of clients and making that big splash. Quantify what a big splash looks like and work backwards from there. Like, what would have to happen in order for you to get to that spot, right? If it's Netflix or who knows what, Amazon Prime, I don't know, whoever, work backwards. Like, what would have to happen in order for you to get there? I mean, like, I can't criticize someone who's, you know, making good money doing the thing they love and that they're good at, but do think about how to direct yourself toward your objective, and be quantitative about it. How many customers at what revenue with what kind of animation, right? And then plot a course there and figure out how you could get to that next lily pad on your journey to Netflix or whatever the ultimate goal.
I think the word I would use is you're being proactive about heading in the direction that you want to go versus being reactive to the, you know, the community that's coming to you on a regular basis. And I know you got to pay the bills, right? So you probably have to do that at some level, but that doesn't preclude you from, you know, being Netflix, you know, cool. You have a vision. There's a vision. I hear it. And we could probably spend, you know, another half an hour talking about that vision and drilling into what that looks like and what it would mean to get there. But I think you probably have an idea of the kinds of things you need to do to get you on the path to head to Netflix. And so instead of thinking, I want to be at Netflix someday, think of, I want to be at Netflix someday, and here is the next step I need to take on the path, followed by the step after that and the step after that. That's probably going to get me in that direction. And I guarantee your steps are going to go back and forth, but as long as you are taking those mini steps, then you actually have a chance of getting to the Netflix thing. You're not going to luck into the Netflix thing, right? You have to be proactively making that happen.
Yeah, tell the story about how that happens.
And
run it forward.
I know that can sound, you know, it's easy for me to sit here and say all that. It's not easy, right? It's not an easy path. It's a hard thing to do. You've been working at it for 4 or 5 years. But you know, you gave us a gem. You said, hopefully someday I'm making something for Netflix around gaming. I heard as well. You know, those are all, there's nothing great. That's great. Now, what are the small steps I need to take to get there? The quantifiable milestones, as Bob would put it.
Hey, everybody, I hate to kill this because this is such a great conversation. I unfortunately have to run, but I can leave the room open for you all to keep talking. I can just make Bob like the host or whatever.
Well, I got to run. Time flew. It was awesome. I'm glad that everybody got a chance to share kind of what they're working on and some milestones. I hope the conversation was helpful.